surely this proves what a stupid world we live in. Let's begin. Of course, you'd think, wouldn't you, a shop whose obviously job is to sell us stuff and therefore get profits would want to presumably press charges to anyone who decided to help themselves to several five-finger discounts, but that's not this story. This story is about a person, a copper, a retired one, who decided to help the police and do his part to actually catch the person who'd done this. And you'd think they'd all be grateful, wouldn't you? But unfortunately not. He was the one who actually got in trouble for it, which is just absolutely bonkers, isn't it? You do a good deed by catching a person who stole something, or in this case 9 things, out of a shop, but strangely you're the one in trouble. It just makes you think, well, why should I bother in future? Anyway, let's get into this. A retired copper was fined apparently £130 after helping police catch a Sainsbury shoplifter, according to this article. And it says that Norman Brennan, a former British Transport police officer, followed the suspect nearly 2 miles before helping police arrest him. He also found the offender's rucksack containing 9 stolen bottles of wine. But not long, apparently, after Norman, who was 64, received a £130 fine from his local council for briefly driving the wrong way down a one-way street during the pursuit. And, don't get me wrong, I understand that he shouldn't have done that. He is not the police. But you would think, wouldn't you, that there'd be some sort of extenuating or mitigating circumstances that he could plead to have this fine quashed, because at the end of the day, he was helping the police, even though he's no longer one himself. But he was helping the police catch a criminal at the end of the day, wasn't he? And yes, I know he could have gone round, but he does say that he would have lost sight of the suspect if he'd taken a different route. But anyway, it continues. Later on, it emerged the shoplifter apparently wasn't even fined or cautioned after the manager of the Sainsbury's local at Twickenham Green, southwest London, decided apparently not to press charges. So, presumably they just allow all shoplifters. Is that right? I can't understand this at all. That is 9 bottles apparently of wine, which admittedly we don't know what wine it is. It could have been the cheap stuff, it could have been the expensive stuff, but at the end of the day, that's beside the point, isn't it? That person still stole out of that shop. And if there's no deterrent in place, like being nicked or even a caution at the end of the day, then let's just give him no reason not to do it again, either at a later date or another shop entirely. And you'd think, wouldn't you, that they'd want to put people off from committing crimes, but surely this just encourages them to commit more. It's just absolutely bonkers at the end of the day. And going back to the retired policeman who helps, of course he can appeal a fine, but it says he did that but was refused, and a local council apparently told him that while I appreciate you were following an alleged shoplifter, you had no legal authority to enter this road. Let's just take, for instance, if it was a different crime altogether, that someone had been stabbed or beaten up or raped or whatever. Would the council still say a similar thing then? That you caught a murderer, but I'm sorry, you entered the road illegally and therefore you'll be fined. It just doesn't make sense, does it? Hopefully in that case the council wouldn't say something like that. If then that is indeed the case, then surely they shouldn't have said the same thing to him this time and should actually let him off, my opinion, because he was assisting police at the end of the day. And yes, I know he doesn't have the authority to do so, but without him, I'm guessing that shoplifter would not have been caught. So you'd like to think a little bit of goodwill would have gone a long way with this. And apparently Norman told Mail Online, what a complete waste of my time and an absolute farce. The only one being punished here is me, and I think he's absolutely right. But how did all this happen? Let's just see. Norman said he was in the car having a cup of coffee at lunchtime last October when he heard a shout and saw a man in his 30s sprinting past with a backpack. He explained, I know the staff in Sainsbury's and saw one of them chasing him. And I followed in my car and drove in front of him, jumped out and confronted him, but he turned off and ran behind a block of flats. Unable to pursue him on foot because of arthritic knees, Norman waited for the thief to reappear and then trailed him to an industrial estate while speaking to a 999 operator who promised backup. Now, let's just think about this. He was speaking to someone on 999. He could have said to them, do I have the authority to go down this road? Presumably, of course, in that case, they may have said yes. Either way, though, he might have thought that as he was chasing a criminal and on the phone to 999, that everything that presumably would be okay. And admittedly, yes, I know he's not Batman at the end of the day, but he was still doing a good deed, wasn't he? So I don't think he is the one he should be punished for at all. But it gets worse, because he says he spent hours appealing against the stupid fine, which apparently has now gone up to £195. I mean, what do the police say all about this? Well, apparently, the police spokesperson said that officers responded to a report of a shoplifting after a man stole several bottles of wine in a shop in Twickenham. He was detained nearby, and officers spoke with staff at the shop who did not wish to pursue the matter further. And the spokesperson for the supermarket said that the safety of our colleagues and customers is our highest priority, and we are in contact with the police about this incident. Well, hopefully they'll say to him that they've had a change of heart and that actually that bloke should be punished for stealing items from their store. But then again, I could be wrong. How can anyone remember a little while ago where Mark Drakeford, I think it was, imposed 20-mile-an-hour speed limits all over Wales? Well, apparently they've done a partial U-turn on that, and I say partial because apparently, according to this article, drivers in Wales will apparently be allowed to break the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit rules, where obviously the rest of us in the UK can't. It's just absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? What is the point of having a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit and then saying, but don't worry, you can break it if you like? The whole thing was pointless to begin with, in my opinion. They should have stuck with 30 miles an hour. And, don't get me wrong, I appreciate it's more of a safety aspect if it's outside a school or a hospital or something like that, but to make all roads, or the majority of the roads, 20 miles an hour is complete farce and stupid, in my opinion. I I know they probably said, we're doing it for the green agenda and environment, but at the end of the day, what they need to realise is that a car uses more petrol or diesel by going at a slower speed than what they do at a high speed, because they have to drive in a lower gear, which obviously uses more power, so surely their logic is out the window, isn't it? But anyways, to see what this article says. Car drivers in Wales will apparently be allowed to drive up to 26 miles an hour in the 20 zones before being prosecuted, in a change, of course, to the rules from the rest of the country. Fines, points, penalties and possible licence loss are new punishments that will come into effect from today if motorists exceed the new speed limits on Welsh roads in residential areas. However, motorists will have a little bit of extra leeway, as Go Safe Wales, the Road Safety Partnership, which brings together the councils and local authorities and the police, have said that the enforcement thresholds would start at 10% of the speed limit plus an extra 4 miles an hour. And this means prosecution starts at 26 miles an hour in a 20 limit, the Telegraph reports. So drivers will be able to break the speed limit apparently by a whopping 6 miles an hour, which, if you think about it, on the 20 mile an hour limit area, that is just over a third, isn't it? It just makes it strange, doesn't it? Well, the rest of us apparently on other roads in Britain are subject to a 10% plus 2 mile an hour threshold, meaning a 20 mile an hour zone sees rule breakers prosecuted at 23 miles an hour, which, in my opinion, whilst admittedly a lot of us, including me, don't really like the thought of 20 mile an hour zones, they are there, aren't they? So we have to follow them. And surely that 10% plus 2 miles an hour is a much more reasonable limit, isn't it? And yes, I know there are people out there who say, well, actually, in a 20 mile an hour limit zone, then you should be prosecuted at 21, old boy. And to them, I'll say, well, yes, admittedly 21 is going over the rules. However, us drivers have to pay attention to the road as well, and therefore not be fixed on the speeder all the time. So if we're not looking at the speeder all the time, then it can be very easy, unless you're using cruise control all the time, that is, to actually go 1 or 2 miles an hour over the speed limit, and therefore that's why these rules are surely put in place. Because if people were looking at their speedos all the time and not looking at the road, then obviously people could walk out in front of you and test your brakes, couldn't they? The Welsh Conservative Minister apparently for Finance said it would be easy to lose a licence in a day due to the unclear and inconsistent signage, and 20 miles an hour being the default limit in residential areas. But critics of this have pointed out that although the revelation makes motorists less likely to be caught than the rest of Britain, including the Conservative-run areas, also has some leeway zones, but is much less. And of course, road safety charity Brake explained that a vehicle going at 25 miles an hour speed would not be able to stop in time to avoid a child running into the road 3 car lengths in front, which the impact would be the same as a child apparently falling from an upstairs window, which is a very good point, isn't it? If you are going 25 or 26 miles an hour, you are clearly breaking that limit, aren't you? However, yes, you obviously are still breaking it at 21, 22 or 23 miles an hour, but the difference would be that surely the person who's breaking it at 26 miles an hour is more than likely doing it on purpose, whereas breaking it at 21 or 22 might be either by accident or because of how the car is calibrated, because strangely in this day and age, not all cars, as far as I'm aware, are calibrated equally, which I'm guessing probably could be down to the varying engine powers and things like that, although I could be wrong. Since the introduction of the speed limit in residential areas in September, Welsh drivers have apparently been treated to a bedding in area, so that's apparently a period where rules were not prosecuted. However, of course, that period ends today, and those speeding could apparently be fined £100 for initial offences, or of course, picking up 3 penalty points. And the Welsh Government says that the limit will apparently save lives, improve air pollution, which obviously is a load of crap in my opinion, and also strangely improve the physical health of the nation. I mean, what do they expect people to say? Oh, sod that, I'll get out and walk, or turn into Mr. Motivate, or something like that. It's just absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? But here you go, they say that will do that because it will make people feel safe to walk and cycle. I bet it would be. They might think they might actually overtake a few cars on the way, I'm guessing. Although in my opinion, it sounds like they got as much sense as Keir Starmer, but unfortunately the way things seem to be going, he could actually be in 10 Downing Street, which is a frightening thought for the next 5 years, isn't it? I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't really want Rishi in there either, because he's a complete bellend in my opinion. He's about as popular as Maybot, but the reform seems to be a much better choice. It's just a pity we're stuck in this first past the post system, isn't it?